Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to the Fast Break Report. In this one, I want to talk about the Washington Wizards because this team is horrendously bad on defense. I'm just going to call it what it is. They don't communicate. They don't have the size. I don't think they really have the personnel, but watching Scott Brooks coach this team is painful for me. Okay, as somebody who understands the sport, as somebody who's been playing it since I was 4 years old, okay, I watched this man coach this team and think to myself, what the hell is he doing? There was a game a week or two ago. I don't remember who it was against, but I watched Scott Brooks send Russell Westbrook out at the 1, Ish Smith out at the 2, and Raul Neto out at the 3 to play defense. Now, granted, Thomas O'Brien wasn't injured at that point, but I'm thinking to myself, how can you possibly, right? How can you possibly send this team out on the floor and expect them to play defense? Davis Bertans, I think his name is. He's not a great defensive player. He's not even really shooting the ball well this year. I mean, he shot really well last year, but this year I don't know. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. But Scott Brooks is the only person you can blame for this team being this bad. I mean, they watching them play defense, like their defense is the equivalent of a wet paper bag. It is that bad. It's so bad that I legitimately believe that Texas A&M could play better defense than the Washington Wizards right now. You can't blame Bradley Beal. Russell Westbrook hasn't been the problem. It is Scott Brooks. When you have guys like Bradley Beal coming out and publicly admitting that their team is bad at defense, like they can't defend anybody right now, that's a problem. And you can tell just between these little public spouts, I guess you want to call them, like where players are making comments on how bad the defense is. Bradley Beal's tenure in Washington is coming to an end. I wouldn't be surprised if by the trade deadline, Scott Brooks is gone and Bradley Beal demands a trade. I understand he just got Russell Westbrook as a teammate, but Russell Westbrook isn't exactly a model of efficiency either. Like, Russell Westbrook makes up for his efficiency with volume. And not that he's a terribly bad player. He's got a lot of heart. He gives 110% every night. The guy wants to win, and so does Bradley Beal. But there's only so long you can put up with something before people decide they want out. I watch Scott Brooks utilize Denny Avdia, if that's his name, if I'm saying that correctly. I could be saying that wrong. But Denny came into the NBA draft as a playmaker. People who actually watched him play knew that Denny was a playmaker. Yes, he can shoot. He can do a little bit of everything. And he's even had some very bright flashes, like some really brilliant examples of passing, I want to say. Like, Denny has been, when he's given the chance to play make, he's very good. He's very good in the pick and roll. He's very good at passing. But he's a rookie, and you got him taking 9 threes like a spot-up shooter when he's more than that. I mean, it's obvious Scott Brooks doesn't know the personnel he has around him, okay? He doesn't know how to play defense, or it's either Scott Brooks doesn't know how to teach defense, or they're just flat out not going over it. That's the only thing that I can really think of at the moment, is that Scott Brooks is not going over defense with his team. Their communication is bad. Their rotations are bad. They can't defend anybody. And now that Thomas O'Brien is injured and pretty much out, I mean, who's defending at the center position? So they've got a lot of kinks to work out. And this year particularly, I understand they just traded Russell Westbrook for John Wall. And when it comes to that trade, I personally believe the Wizards won that trade only because they're going to get a guy who's actually going to play, not a guy who's going to be injured every season. And if we're talking about Houston, since the James Harden trade, their team is like the epitome of an injury-prone team at the minute. Like, as a Pacers fan, I am so glad we got rid of Victor Oladipo for Karis LeVert, because Oladipo constantly got injured. He was on an expiring contract, yada, yada, yada. You know, that'll be a separate thing for another day. But it's just the idea, like, the Wizards have a point guard now, a guy who's actually going to play. Yes, they're paying more for him than they did for John Wall, but it is what it is. And they need to find some way to get this to work, because if they don't, if this team is not, I don't want to say consistently winning games, but if they're at least winning some games, I think they have to finish the season at the very least 40-42, or close to that mark at least. And even then, I don't think that's going to be enough to keep Bradley Beal in Washington. Okay, we saw it with Harden. Okay, we saw it with James Harden, where getting John Wall wasn't enough to keep him in Houston, and I think Russell Westbrook going to Washington isn't going to be enough to keep Bradley Beal there. That's just my personal opinion. I just don't see how Scott Brooks is going to continue to have a job by the end of this season, and it could also be that the players are not truly trying on defense because they don't like Scott Brooks, and I could be wrong, but I don't think Bradley Beal likes Scott Brooks either. So I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but the Wizards have Bradley Beal. They're wasting his time. They're wasting his talents. And when I watch Scott Brooks coach this team, when I see the lineups and the sets that he runs, I'm like, I can't help but think to myself, this guy does not deserve to be coaching in the NBA. He would probably be a decent college coach or something like that, but when I watch him send out these sets of Ish Smith, Russell Westbrook, and Raul Neto, and Davis Bertans, I think his name is, they're not defending anybody. They're not going to defend anybody. I don't know if they're purposely tanking, but that team has a couple really talented players on it, like Roy Hachimura. They got Denny. They've got Westbrook. They've got Bradley Beal. Thomas O'Brien, granted, just went down. You know, they've got some guys who can actually play. Bertans can actually, last year he shot pretty well, so we know he can actually shoot the rock. Like, they've got some talented players. Granted, it's not like the Los Angeles Lakers, but they should be winning more games than they're currently losing at the current point in time. Against some of the teams that they've played, they should have won. I mean, I don't know, man. I just don't think Scott Brooks is the answer, and this has been a going trend with him as well. In Oklahoma City, they didn't really emphasize defense. I mean, now he's in Washington, and the defense is almost quite literally non-existent. So I don't know, man. I don't know what's going to happen here by the time the trade deadline gets here, but I expect Scott Brooks to eventually be fired before the trade deadline, and I expect Bradley Beal to request a trade before the trade deadline if they don't get their act together. So tell me what you guys think down below in the comment section below. Like, helps me out. Subscribe if you guys want to see more. This has been the Fast Break Report, and I'm out of here. Peace, guys.